Hi guys, how you going? Cambell here from Autodidactic Channel. Hope you're having a joyous day. And as always guys, autodidactic means to be self-educated, and more now than ever we need to be self-educated, because if we are not, the only choice we have left to us is to believe what we are told. And today I wanted to have a look at the whole history thing, what's really gone on in the last couple of 100 years, because we do find ourselves at the moment in a very strange place. You know, no one's really sure what's going on. There's obviously two sides to this battle that's happening at the moment, and clearly one side is trying to take over, and we the people do not want that. But I've been thinking about, you know, where did this all start and how long has this been going for? You know, what's really been going on Earth in the last couple of 100 years? Because when we look around, we see all these buildings that look like they were made, you know, in another time for another world. You know, they're completely different to the buildings that we build today and that we can build today. You know, just in their sheer size, you know, their magnificence, the way that they've, you know, been constructed, and the fact that they're still almost all in perfect condition today. And clearly, many of them, or most of them, are very old. They're much older than we're told. And the other thing about this story is we're told all these buildings were built, pretty much, we're talking that you know, the city-type buildings were pretty much built in the 1800s. And in the 1800s, we didn't have machinery, we didn't have cars, trucks, petrol, diesel, didn't even have steam engines, no cranes. You know, there might have been simple pulleys and things that they could use. And then as far as, you know, crafting, you know, the blocks and all the craft works that they've done, you know, the skill required to do all this is just huge, and the resources as well. They never talk about where all the materials for these buildings came from. And we just end up with things that look like this. And it's almost out of the realm for us to imagine designing something like this, because it's very far away from our society. We now live in boxes, little square boxes that they throw up, you know, quickly and for a lifetime of 10 years, 20 years. And they just sit there, they're not efficient, they guzzle energy. And then around us we have these magnificent structures, and they are huge. They look like they're built for giants. They really do. So what's going on here with all these buildings? You know, and this is not to mention that a lot of them seem to be sunk into the ground and have windows going straight into the ground, have stairs going up to a second story. But with these old buildings too, you'll notice that there are similar designs. We have these cathedrals, you know, with the big pointy spires. We have more castle-looking type structures with the square, more squared-off towers. Then obviously we have the big, you know, the big houses, and there's a couple of different styles there. We have the Capitol buildings with their big domes, and this architecture is the same all over the earth. So let's get in and have a bit of a look at some of the buildings and how the story they tell us does not quite add up. And in case you didn't know, Photoshop has been around for quite a while, since the 1800s at least that we know of. And you can see this picture here has clearly been photoshopped. This was the original, as far as I know. I'm not sure exactly who this gentleman is. And if you have a look at the background, it's, you know, everything's exactly the same. Nice Masonic floor there. Bit of different ground on this one. And they've just inserted Abraham Lincoln standing here. This one is of Hitler. You can see he's standing there having a chat to some friends. But over on this side, we have this gentleman who has been taken out of the photo. As you can see, it's a good job. You know, the background's a bit different here, but you wouldn't notice that. Here's another one. This is looks like an officer. He's actually smoking a cigar, as you can see, and the smoke's running up, and there's his girlfriend or wife in his cigar smoke. And these, there's quite a few of these. It's a bit strange, but lots of headless photos. As you can see, we've got a bunch of soldiers all carrying their own heads. This was produced by the Russian government as part of a propaganda project back in the 30s and 40s, I think. And as you'll see, it looks like a supersonic jet thing flying out of the water. And here's some more of the creepy headless photos. You can see these are all, you know, early 1900s, late 1800s. You know, all a bit morbid. But this is what they could do, you know, photo manipulation. This guy's got his head on a stick. And so this is what was going on back in the 1800s. Look at this one. Now they could definitely do this. And so what's to say that the photos that we're looking at, where they're actually trying to hide the truth from us and hide history, what's to say that they are not manipulated? In fact, you know, with what we know about the world and what's going on, it would make sense that they were manipulated, because we know that they're lying. They're lying to us. And this is the temple in Salt Lake City. An absolutely magnificent structure. I mean, you can just see the work that's gone into this. You know, very, obviously a huge building as well, very old world, and just looks like a castle. And the story with this is the Mormons turned up, you know, looking for their promised land kind of thing, turned up in their buggies and, you know, with just what they had on their backs. They may have had simple tools, but they had no machinery. There was no industry here. The story is they just turned up and it was a blank canvas, and they started building pretty much straight away, and it took them 40 years to build this temple with no tools, no industry, no nothing. And so let's have a look at this temple. So this is a construction photo, we're told, of the temple. You can see we've got, looks like bulls and a cart. Everyone here is posing for the camera. Look at them all. Every single one of them is looking at the camera, even these people up top. And you'll see that we've got a flat piece of ground here and then a mound going up. Clearly this guy's, you know, they're high, they're on a mound. Now, for a building of this size, you do not do that. You flatten the land, you build a very, you know, good foundation, or dig a hole for the foundation and build that, and then you build on flat land. And these windows look like they're going into the ground. So what's going on here? This looks half built. Did they build this? Well, all these wooden cranes and things up here, you can see that there's nothing around on the ground for them to lift, for starters. So what are they doing? You know, because it looks like they're there to, you know, lift the rocks up. That's what we're supposed to think, that they're lifting the blocks up. But there's nothing on the ground. There seems to be no organisation, nothing ready for them to do. No tools anywhere, just rubble. It's just kind of all rubble and dirt. Now what happened is they did an excavation on this building, and this is what they found. This is the front of the temple, and this is the stairs going up to the front door, and this clearly is a whole nother level underground. This is the original sandstone foundation, and this is a whole nother level with windows. You can see this doorway went straight down. The whole lot. Here's a different angle, and you'll see with this one, this is actually, there's a guy down here, and you can see they've measured this. So this is 14 feet, and this is another 16 feet. So that's 30 feet underground, one 14-foot level. And again, you can see this window continues straight under the ground. Now, we need to ask ourselves, why has this been hidden? Because the people who've turned up and found Salt Lake City, they've found this temple. Clearly they did not build this underground, and clearly it has not filled up with this much dirt in the last 100 years or so. So they knew this was here, and they have hidden this. They've hidden it from us. Apart from the fact they've hidden the that these buildings were already here and that the 40-year period was actually just a clean-up job, not a construction job. They've also hidden that there was a huge event in our past, in the last 200 or 300 years, that has covered a lot of buildings up to 30 feet in mud, and some are more. Now, when they did the pictures for their renovation, you'll see this is one of them, and they've drawn these subterranean floors in the picture. And here we have a construction photo, what we're told is a construction photo of them building the temple. And we have lots of men standing around. You know, they've got waistcoats. It's not really work clothes, is it? They've got, like, you know, vests and things on, but they're all, again, posing for the camera. Look at them all. Even the guys in the background, they're all posing. But look at this scene. Huge blocks of cut stone and not a tool in sight. Not a crane, not a trolley, nothing. No hand tools. And this guy's just standing here pointing at it. You know, this guy cannot lift this block with his mates. He can't. And look at how it's just all over the place. You know, if they were cutting this and going to make a temple, it would all be stacked up, right? You know, and ready to use if they were cutting this. And it begs the question, how are they cutting it and transporting it all? You know, is this just rubble left from something that's been smashed from whatever caused this mud flood? And just one more pic here. This is, again, around the turn of the century. You can see we've got a cartwheel here. Fully constructed temple in the background. And this wall. You know, a big stone wall. And it's quite clearly a very tall wall. You can see there's a man here. And he's off the ground. So, you know, that's a pretty big wall. 25, 30 foot probably. You know, three of him or four. And it's just sitting there. Obviously, the rest of it's gone. And again, we just get rubble all over the ground. Just rubble everywhere. So what really went on in Salt Lake City? And here we have the Capitol building in Washington. And the same thing, they did a renovation. And when they dug down, they exposed that there was another level underneath, already there. And this is the same story, built in the 1800s. But if we zoom in here, you'll see that the steps clearly stop here on what looks like a lintel, and there's columns going down below the ground. See this window? See how it goes below this? This all looks like new concrete reinforcing, like concrete walls. But clearly you can see that what's behind this clearly goes down. You can see it here to another window going down. Columns, the whole lot. This is a street in Russia, and again they were doing excavations. This looks like they were doing roadworks, putting pipes and things in. And they've dug down and look what they've exposed. Windows and doors. This one still has a window frame on it by the looks of it. Going straight down into the ground, and the foundations are way down here. And this is just all mud. And this was called the Hole of Paris. It was, again, a huge government works where they did excavations. And on this one, you'll see they've uncovered multiple stories, 3 or 4 stories here. But all these old buildings on top. And underneath, going down, we have columns down here. This has all been exposed. Okay, they might have put some reinforcing in there, I'm not sure, but you can see there's brick walls behind there and there's columns all the way along. And if you think that maybe, you know, these columns are part of reinforcing, why would they use columns? They would just be using this concrete wall stuff. So there's definitely stuff under there, you know. Basically, we're walking on history. Civilization is under our feet. It seems to have been covered up, and covered up a lot. As far as physically, the buildings have been covered. I think some we've completely lost, and others we're just seeing the tops of. or we've just lost a couple of stories. But again, the question is, this event would have been a huge worldwide event, and we're talking 200 to 300 years ago, and it's been completely erased from our story. Just like the civilization of Tartaria. The country of Tartaria has been erased from our history books and from our atlases and maps. Why? What happened? What happened 200 or 300 years ago? Because I think, with all the evidence that we've got, it was the start of something, the start of a takeover, the start of people trying to change the world so that they could turn it into the place that they wanted it to be. And we are seeing the results of that right now in the world that we're living in right now. And so we have all these maps of this country, Tartaria. As you'll see right here, Tartaria. And Tartaria, or Tartary, was a huge country. It covered basically most of Russia, China, India, and it looks like it was sort of a lot of Eastern Europe as well. And it's just, if you look at the maps, it just got pushed back and it was just made smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. There is still a province in Russia called Tartarzan, and there's still Tartars around, but what we're told now is that Tartaria wasn't a country. We're told that it was just a region and a people. But quite clearly, it's on maps everywhere. Tartary, China. So why has this been hidden from us? Because maps don't just get drawn. Back in the day, maps were expensive to do. And Tartaria is everywhere. As you can see here, look how big it used to be. And again, it's been erased from our history. It's not taught in schools. It's not even taught in history in universities. But clearly, it did exist, and all the maps seem to stop around the 1800s, the early 1800s. So again, we get this time frame of the sort of mid-1700s to mid-1800s, where there was a lot of change. A lot of the information that used to be known was suddenly taken away and was hidden. History was changed. A big event happened that buried buildings. And we also have issues with our dates, and these all seem to come in again around that time frame, sort of 1700s. As you can see on this crest here, we've got a J. That's a definite J. J648, and what that stands for is J for Jesus. So it's in the year of our Lord. Well, 648 years after the year of Jesus, the year of our Lord. That's how they used to write it. And then in the 1600s, the Jesuits and Joseph Scaliger basically changed all these to a 1, making this 648 year now 1648. So you'll see a lot of these either a J or an I for Iusa, which is another way to say Jesus. You'll see here, this is actually, it's not a tombstone, it's like a mileage stone. They used to put them on the side of the roads to tell you how far you were from certain places. And as you can see here, this is quite clearly a J. J794. So this is saying 794 years after the death of Jesus. Okay, so not only have they stolen and changed history, they've actually added 1,000 years. 1,000 years. You can see here, that's clearly a J. 686. So we're not even living in the time frame that we believe we are. Another one, J626. This is a picture from an old book, and again you can see we've got 656, and now this one looks more like an I than a J, but it's definitely not a 1. So I-656 in the year of Isa, well, 656 years after the death of Isa. Now this is called the King's Desk, and this is a piece of furniture that we're told was made in the 1700s, it's around the 1750s, for King Louis XV of France, I believe. And I mean, you can just see the workmanship. You know, we see a lot of this kind of furniture, and then we see a lot of cheap reproductions, people trying to reproduce this kind of stuff, and they just can't. But what's interesting about this desk, apart from the craftsmanship, I mean, just look at this thing, it's just ridiculous, is the date. The person who created this desk, apparently, or who at least signed their name to it, you'll see this J is actually dotted. J769. Okay, so, and there's that. And that's just a few examples, guys. These things are everywhere. They're on a lot of maps, a lot of old drawings, coins, you know, pottery, things like this. So if you look into it, it's clear that 1,000 years has been added. Okay, so this J769 became 1769. They've added 1,000 years to our story. So what happened in that 1,000 years, and why was it added, and what were they trying to hide? It's also the time frame that the robber barons started to take over in the Americas. Okay, so there you go. The history that we've been told is clearly not what has gone on. We're being lied to, and our history is being covered up. And so in the next episode, we're going to get into who exactly are these people who have hidden history from us and basically stolen everything for themselves and their families. And this is how they've created this generational wealth that is now making the rules, or trying to, for all the people on Earth. Johann Peter Rockefeller was born 17th of October 1681 in Seggendorf, Germany, in the Rhine region. He was married twice, had 8 children, and he was the first Rockefeller to move to America and the New World. Johann and his family immigrated from Germany to Philadelphia on the 9th of March 1722, and Johann died in Amwell, Hunterdon County, New Jersey, somewhere between 1763 and 1766, and he does have a tombstone which was erected by his great-great-great-grandson, I believe, who is J.D. Rockefeller, John Davison Rockefeller, and the inscription says, "In the memory of Johann Peter Rockefeller, who came from Germany about the year 1723, died in 1763. He gave this land for a burial place for his family, its descendants, and his neighbours. This monument erected in 1906 by John Davison Rockefeller, a direct descendant." So a bit of the history about Philadelphia, where Johann and his family landed, is it begins in 1682 when the city was founded by William Penn in the English Crown Province of Pennsylvania. Before then, the area was inhabited by the Lenape or Delaware Indians and Swedish settlers who had arrived in the area in the early 1600s. So this town was basically about 40 years old when Johann Rockefeller arrived, And I just thought we'd have a bit of a look at what Philadelphia actually looked like in the early 1700s. So this picture here is actually from 1770, and this is a depiction of Philadelphia. And as you can see, we have huge old world buildings. We have the columns, we have the porticos, we have the domes, we have antennas on all the domes, big brick buildings built right up on the waterfront, and this is clearly a man-made waterfront. You can see this right angle up here, and more houses going off into the distance. So this is 1770. This is around about, well, just under 100 years after Philadelphia was found by William Penn. And they tell us, the mainstream narrative tells us that when he turned up, there were only uncivilized Indians there who basically had no architecture like this. They had no infrastructure. It was just open plains and forest is what they tell us. So less than 100 years. Okay, so this picture here is of Philadelphia again. And this is the 1700s. I'm not sure exactly what the date on this one is. I believe it was around the sort of 1750s, a bit earlier. And again, you can see this depiction, and look at how built up this is across here. It's just completely built out with huge towers and spires everywhere and big. And you can see from the perspective, these in the front, these are big buildings. These are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories high. Imagine how tall this is. And then in the foreground we just have all these sailboats. So what is really going on here? Description of the situation, harbour, and the city and port of Philadelphia. And down here we have the State House. And as you can see, this has windows that go into the ground and stairs that go up to the front door, suggesting that there is a bit more of this building under the ground. And look at this wall. This looks, very much like what we see, what we're told is castle type walls, with all these turrets along it. Clearly made of stone, and it also is reminiscent of what is called a star fort. And this is all supposed to have been built by the settlers in a new land with no industry, all under 100 years to get this. Build all this out. Here is another picture. This is Arch Street, Pennsylvania. This is the church. And as you can see, this is again back in the 1700s. And this is a 2-story building. This is a 3-story building, 4-story. There's a window up there. All brick buildings all down the road. And this huge cathedral spire. And on this side of the road you'll see we have steps going up to the front doors on all these houses, and you'll see there's a window down here that goes into the ground. And we've got lights on the street, we've got bollards up and down the road, cobblestone roads, all, they tell us, built by the colonists in under 100 years. Here's another picture. And this is, we can see the type of technology they had. They had horse and carts. But in the background we have these huge, magnificent buildings. This is a map of Philadelphia. Again, this is the building we saw before. This is 1750. So this is less than 100 years. It was founded 1668, I believe the date was. 1660s anyway. Oh, actually, yeah, so what am I saying? Yeah, under 100 years. And this building again, clearly windows going straight into the ground. Who would build a building with windows going into the ground? And if we look down here, this is a map of the area, and you'll just see, this is 1750. Look at all the towns. Look how many towns there are here. This is Philadelphia, and you can see it's already full of buildings, but look at all these towns everywhere around, and look how they're drawn, how they've got big spires on a lot of them. Everywhere. So this, like I said, under 100 years after this area was found, towns everywhere, huge buildings, and they seem to be sunken into the ground. Here's another picture. This is early 1700s, and again, it's the same thing. The same buildings are there, just huge spires everywhere, big brick buildings. And this one you can see again that the shoreline here is completely man-made into a big, docks, wharfs, things like that, but completely man-made, like the whole edge of it. And as we saw in that previous picture, it's all made of stone. And here's another one. Same thing, big brick buildings everywhere, spires, domes, but on the ground we just have horse and carts, people riding horses. Not sure what the road is here. A lot of these roads are mud or dirt. In that one photo we saw we had cobblestone. But look, big 3-4 story brick buildings. Brand new colony, less than 100 years. They turned up, there was no industry. They tell us there was nothing there, and you can see these buildings go all the way down the street. So Johann and his family were in the USA, and he became a landowner and a plantation owner. He ran some plantations, and he did quite well, and he had a son called William. And William Rockefeller, there's not too much on what he did. He was obviously in the USA. Then had a son called Godfrey, and Godfrey was a farmer as well, a landowner and a businessman, but he wasn't very good. He's described as a failed businessman, and basically he had to move around quite a bit because of failed businesses. And it says between 1832 and 1834, Godfrey and his family had to move west. There are various reasons given, but one account is that Godfrey and several neighbours lost their land in a title dispute. Another one is that he traded his farm for another farm, but that's interesting that he may have lost his land in a title dispute back in the 1830s. So the question is, who was the dispute with? This is, still fairly new land, lots of it. So yeah, was this some people that were already there disputing that that was actually their land? And our man Godfrey had a son called another William Avery. And William Avery Rockefeller was known as Devil Bill. Okay, so Devil Bill was basically a con man, and he was one of these snake oil salesmen who went around the country selling his, potions and lotions, claiming he could cure cancer and every other disease and ailment, and basically just stole everyone's money and left town, much like the scenes that you see in many old, Western movies of these guys. The old snake oil salesman, that was Devil Bill. And an interesting story is, it says that when he met, because he's the father of John Davison Rockefeller, J.D. Rockefeller, and it says that when Devil Bill met J.D.'s mother, he actually knocked on her door pretending to be deaf and dumb, and it was part of a scam to try and get money, and she fell for him and didn't care that he was trying to scam her, because obviously he wasn't deaf and dumb, and she ended up marrying him. And Bill was off most of the time, running around the country ripping people off. He also had children with multiple other women and was accused of rape in at least one circumstance. And this is the family that J.D. Rockefeller grew up in, and he actually tried to hide all of his father's past, but it all came out in the end. So J.D. Rockefeller was raised by his father, who was of questionable ethics, to say the least, and his mother, who is described as very religious, but also as very cold and cruel. And basically, John grew up, and it says here, the story goes that by the age of 12, he had already saved $50, and then he loaned it to a farmer at 7% interest, payable in 1 year. This was supposed to be the start of John's business career, where he learnt the value of charging interest to people and having money work for him. And at the age of 16, he began working in Cleveland as a bookkeeper. After a few years, he had a dispute with his boss over pay and decided to leave. Now, at this point, he'd already saved up some money and he got a partner, and they started a commission merchants business where they traded grain, meats, hay, and other miscellaneous goods. And what happened? This was in 1860, and it was the start of the outbreak of the Civil War, and wouldn't you know it, J.D. Rockefeller just happened to get the commission to supply the army with all its food and other bits and pieces, and within his first year of business at 21, he had made $500,000. So John started looking into other businesses and decided that oil was the way to go. And in the 1860s, oil was mainly used, they were getting kerosene off it to light lamps. But the whole history of the digging for oil is something that will need to be looked into deeper at a later date, because there were all these oil wells, but at the time there wasn't many things that actually used oil. So after a few years, JD had made a lot of money in his business supplying the Civil War armies, but as that started to diminish, he started to look for other businesses, and he formed a business in 1863, and a year later had a dispute with his partner and bought him out. And so by 1865, JD basically, at the age of 24, owned his own oil refinery business. He wasn't a driller, he just wanted to refine because he thought that drilling was too expensive, too hit and miss. He just wanted to be where the guaranteed profits were. JD built this company up with his brother William, and by 1890, a couple of decades later, they had a 90% monopoly on the oil business in the USA. And so what John was doing, he was actually buying up all the competition. He was also buying up all, the transportation, all the related industries, so that he controlled the full supply line basically, and had no competition, so he could completely control the market as a monopoly, which of course is illegal. Now he did this using trusts. Basically they introduced trusts, and this is where it all started, all these the beginning of trust law. And what they were doing was putting everything under, using a trust as an umbrella, so that it was really a tax dodge and all this kind of stuff, to say that the owners didn't really own everything and it was all a company. And that way, it didn't really look like one person owned all of these different businesses. But by 1890, it had become very obvious that this was all being controlled by John Rockefeller, and US Congress actually passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was the first federal legislation prohibiting trusts and combinations that restrain trade. 2 years later, the Ohio Supreme Court dissolved the Standard Oil Trust. However, the business within the trust soon became part of Standard Oil of New Jersey, which functioned as a holding company And in 1911, after years of litigation, the US Supreme Court ruled Standard Oil of New Jersey was in violation of antitrust laws and forced it to dismantle. It was broken up into more than 30 individual companies. So what happened there is basically he was doing a huge dodgy, very unethical. And when you look into John Rockefeller, so many people say that he was such a religious man and so ethical and so nice, and he had all these, he was such a philanthropist and he had all these things that he gave money to, but the truth is he wasn't. And you can see straight here that he had a monopoly. He was told to dismantle it. He didn't. He basically swindled and used the law to restructure his businesses and trusts and the way that they were set up and his contracts, etc., to make it look like it was broken up. And he ran it for another 20 years like that before the Supreme Court finally broke it up into 30 different companies. And at that point, John pretty much disappeared. And so J.D. Rockefeller, basically after the 1890s, after the first court, when they broke up the company, he went into retirement, even though he was still running the company, and spent most of his time with Andrew Carnegie, who was another Gilded Age tycoon. He made his money from the steel industry, and together the both of them basically started many, many foundations. And Rockefeller himself is reported to have given over $500 million to his various foundations, which include the establishment of the University of Chicago and the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. So why is this all relevant? Philanthropy and the Rockefeller Foundation. So J.D. Rockefeller was now the richest person in the US, and he had retired from public office basically because of all the scandals that had happened with him trying to monopolize the oil industry, which was of course a standard practice back in the day with the robber barons, who we are told are people that just turned up. They all started off with nothing, and literally within a decade they all controlled like an entire industry. So we had like the railway industry and steel, which was Carnegie. We had oil, which was Rockefeller. Then we had lots of other people involved in things like steamboats and other transportation, buildings, real estate, all the kind of stuff that you would find if you turned up to a civilization that had been wiped out by something, and you found all the remnants and all of their machinery and things like train tracks already in the ground, because we see all these photos of people unearthing railway tracks. So what was JD to do with all his money? Well, he retired from public life. It was around 1900. So the story goes that JD's interest in philanthropy began in 1904, and it was influenced by Ida Tarbell's book published about the crimes of Standard Oil. And it says that his initial idea to set up a large-scale foundation occurred in 1901, but it was not until 1906 that his famous advisor, Frederick Taylor Gates, seriously revived the idea, saying that Rockefeller needed to give away his money, otherwise his inheritors would become intoxicated with power. But it also goes into, one of the main reasons JD wanted to do this is because he had such a bad public image because of the way that he treated people. He was basically the richest person in the US, and he treated his workers extremely badly, gave them very bad working conditions and very poor pay. And he was the richest man in the US, and he was underpaying all his workers. So people did not like this guy. And so really all this philanthropy stuff that he got into, philanthropy, it was all, to start with, it was all centered around his public image. And there were movies made of him. There were all these media events held, and they got papers out to write up stories about him. And he was the one who started the whole kissing baby things. And he used to walk around, and they had brought all kids in and made him look all grandfatherly. And he was really one of the first people to use the media to, for personal image, to really create a media image. And it worked. And by the time he died, people, thought of him as this, great philanthropist person who sort of spent his life working, for the rest of the human population, which is really far from the truth. Because, like I said, he really got into this to change his public image. But then we look at what he actually started giving money to, and where we are now, we can start to get a bit of a better picture. So, it says the first secretary of the foundation was Jerome Davis Green, the former secretary of Harvard University. He created a board, and the first grant was $100,000, which they gave to the American Red Cross. But it wasn't just money given to them, it was to purchase property for their headquarters in Washington, D.C. At the beginning, the foundation was global in its approach and concentrated in its first decade entirely on the sciences, public health, and medical education. And that is a recurring theme that you will see. So in 1913, the foundation set up the International Health Commission, later the International Health Board. The first appropriation of funds for work outside of the US, which was launched in international public health activities and expanded into the Sanitary Commission. So basically, what they were doing was going around the world and looking at health, and its early field research was on things like hookworm, malaria, yellow fever. And the commission established and endowed the world's Freudian slip, the world's first school of hygiene and public health at Johns Hopkins University. Okay, have we heard that name in the last couple of months, guys? Okay, and later at Harvard. They spent more than $25 million back in the day developing other public health schools. Okay, so what was happening? He was creating all these things. As you can see, back in the early 1900s, they were already going into third world countries, developing nations as they're called now, and looking for things like malaria, yellow fever, and, what came out of that? Vaccines. Okay, this was 100 years ago. And then he creates the world's first hygiene and public health at Johns Hopkins University. So straight away, they're getting into this whole health hygiene thing. And Rockefeller actually started and funded the first, the first medical schools that were recognized lawfully, legally. Is that right? So, the first medical doctors, the places where you could go and get a doctorate in medicine, that was all J.D. Rockefeller. And what he did is he basically trashed out all the herbalists and all the, the traditional herbalists and healers, and basically put a media campaign out saying they were all, like witch doctors and practicing things that didn't work and they were harming people. Of course, it was all false. And he started promoting allopathic medicine. Okay, so allopathic medicine, there were two types of medicine back there. There was the herbalism and allopathic, which was basically using minerals and they used to grind up rocks and different chemicals and stuff and try to fix people with that. And they were into, bleeding people and leeches and all this kind of stuff, which never worked. And that is the foundation of what we have today. The Western medical system that we have today is directly straight from allopathy. It's allopathic medicine. It's still called that. And so this is what happened. He basically used all his money to fund allopathic medicine, where he could get in there and patent things, because you see, with herbalism, you can't patent a plant, and if people find out what plants to use, they can go and grow them. There's no money in it. People just get well, by what the earth gives them. But with allopathic, because he's making up his tinctures and potions, he can then patent them and make lots of money. Hence the start of Big Pharma. Okay, some other things that his money went into. The Department of Industrial Relations. So he was also big into, you know, the law and getting in there and making sure that everyone who didn't have the right, you know, education, the right letters behind their name wasn't allowed to practice. And that's how he got rid of a lot of industries. And it was devastating for all the people obviously in those industries, and he just funded and pushed his own agenda forward. In psychiatry, during the late 1920s, the Rockefeller Foundation created the Medical Sciences Division, which emerged from the former Division of Medical Education. The division was led by Dr. Richard M. Pierce until his death in 1930. During this period, the Division of Medical Sciences was known for making large contributions to research across several fields of psychiatry. The 1930s was one of the most prominent decades in Rockefeller Foundation philanthropy to psychiatric research at the foundation. They set a goal to find, train and encourage scholars for research and practice. So what does that say to you? They set a goal to find, train and encourage scholars for research and practice. So what they're saying there is they were setting up the industry of psychiatry. Before this, there were no psychiatrists. This is why they went out to find and train people and scholarly people, so they could, you know, say, well, this is a smart person with letters behind their name. Listen to them, you know, talking about psychiatry now, and he funded that all. Social sciences. Through the Laura Spelman Rockefeller Memorial, established in 1918, the Rockefeller fortune was one of the first directed to supporting research by social scientists. Social engineering, anyone? During its first few years of work, the LSRM awarded funds primarily to social workers, and its funding decisions guided primarily by Jr., which is Rockefeller Jr. In 1922, Beardsley Rummy was hired to direct it, and he most decisively shifted the focus of Rockefeller philanthropy into the social sciences, stimulating the founding of university research centers and creating the Social Science Research Council. Okay, now where do you think that led, guys? Social Science Research Council, we're talking social workers, the social system, these people who come out to people's houses, tell them how to raise their children, and if they don't tick the boxes, take their children away from them. Okay, this is the beginning of that. Rockefeller again. Okay, let's go down. Eugenics. Beginning in 1930, the Rockefeller Foundation provided financial support to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Anthropology, Human Heredity and Eugenics, which later inspired and conducted eugenics experiments in the Third Reich. The Rockefeller Foundation funded Nazi racial studies even after it was clear that the research was being used to rationalize the demonizing of Jews and other groups. Up until 1939, the Rockefeller Foundation was funding research used to support Nazi racial science studies. Okay, that's what they tell us. The funding didn't stop in 1939, and I think we all know that. Anyone who's looked into this knows that, and knows what happened after this. You know, after World War II with Project Paperclip and Rockefeller. Was it Rockefeller? Pretty sure it was Rockefeller. Was a known. No, sorry. Bush Senior was also in there, and he was basically put on trial, but he wasn't jailed, but he was also working with the armies from Germany. Can I say that? Don't want to get this video cut. Hi YouTube, if you're listening, I'm just reading articles. Alright, so there you go. They funded, it's here, this is actually on Wikipedia. So that's all I'm doing, YouTube, reading Wikipedia. They funded the Nazis, it said, up until 1939. Okay, and then the foundation also supported the early initiatives of Henry Kissinger. such as his directorship of Harvard's international seminars, funded as well by the CIA, and the early foreign policy magazine Confluence, both established by him while he was still a graduate student. So, oh gosh. Are you getting the picture here, guys? And of course we know that the Rockefellers were basically bankrolled by the Rothschilds. Hope that doesn't get this video cut. But yeah, the Rothschilds, the Red Shields, that they were bankrolling all of this. And that money came, of course, from England back in the 1700s with the whole Amschel Rothschild saga. Alright, so throughout the years, the foundation had expanded greatly in scope. Historically, it had given away more than $14 billion in today's dollars to thousands of grantees worldwide, and had assisted directly in the training of nearly 13,000 Rockefeller Fellows. Its overall philanthropic activity has been divided into 5 main subject areas. We have medical, health, and population sciences. Okay, where are we at the moment, guys? Agriculture and natural sciences. So agriculture, food supply. Natural sciences, environmentalism, greenhouse, warming, yes. Arts and humanities, of course, that's pretty much been destroyed. Social sciences, of course, we get into, that's all to do with children, foster care, all this kind of stuff. And of course, international relations, of course. So this is where the Rockefeller money went. And it says down here, thousands of scientists and scholars from all over the world have received foundation fellowships and scholarships for advanced study in major scientific disciplines. In addition, the foundation has provided significant and often substantial research grants to finance conferences and assists with published studies, as well as funding departments and programs to a vast range of foreign policy and educational organizations. Okay, now, do you see what's happened here? Like just that paragraph there. I'll read it again. Thousands of scientists and scholars from all over the world have received foundation fellowships and scholarships for advanced study in major scientific disciplines. In addition, the foundation has provided significant and often substantial research grants to finance conferences and assist with published studies, as well as funding departments and programs to a vast range of foreign policy and educational organizations. What that is saying, they've now monopolized. They went from oil. Now, this was JD's greatest, gift to the cabal, was monopolization. They even brought out a game called Monopoly and tried to teach people it was the right thing to do. This statement here, this paragraph says that they went out, they created basically the education systems and also the graduate systems where you get degrees and you're recognized and you can legally practice these so-called sciences. They then went out, and it said they went out and they hunted, they looked for people that they could then retrain and then give money to go out and to teach and to preach this new philosophy. And this was across, health, eugenics, social structures. I mean, this is the whole of society monopolized. I don't know how else to say it. Okay, so the vast range of organizations that they funded included the Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Brookings Institute, the World Bank, Harvard University, Yale University, Princeton University, Columbia University, University of the Philippines, McGill University, the Library of Congress. Wow. Bode Lane Library, Oxford University, the Population Council, Social Science Research Council, the National Bureau of Economic Research, the National Institute of Public Health of Japan, the Group of 30, the London School of Economics, the University of Lyon in France, the Trinidad Regional Virus Laboratory, the Results for Development Institute, the Mahidol University in Thailand. It's just some of the people they fund. The Rockefeller Foundation has accomplished some notable achievements, such as financially supported education in the United States. Everyone gets to be indoctrinated for free. They helped establish the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, established Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. Here's that name again, Harvard School of Public Health, established the School of Hygiene. Okay, and this was all back in the 1920s and 30s, guys. Okay, London School of Hygiene, the Harvard School of Public Health, Johns Hopkins Public Health, the School of Hygiene. Okay, what's going on at the moment? What are people washing their hands with? What are people putting on their faces? They also developed the vaccine to prevent yellow fever. First vaccines came from the same money source. They helped the new school provide a haven for scholars threatened by Nazis. That's a nice way of saying Project Paperclip, isn't it? The foundation also funded several infamous projects, various German eugenics programs, the construction of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Brain Research, and an experiment conducted by the Vanderbilt University in the 40s where they gave 800 pregnant women radioactive iron in pills without their consent. Nice. It was established that 3 children had died from that experiment. Ah, gosh. And then we get into the Green Revolution. Agriculture was introduced to the natural science. What do these guys, seriously, what are they not funding and controlling? Agriculture was introduced to the Natural Sciences Division of the Foundation in the major reorganization of 1928 to 1941. Now, back around that time as well, guys, something, big happened in farming. And it's still going as far as, family farms hardly exist anymore. They've all been bought out by corporations and corporatized. But back around the 20s and 30s was where, the big change went from, the smaller family farms that were just growing their crops and, growing a diverse amount of crops and selling them more market garden type things. And it changed to monoculture, to just growing these big fields of, one grain, wheat and barley, and using tons of fertilizer to do it. And that's still what's going on today, and we are seeing the results all over the earth, with pollution in rivers, with land degradation, soil erosion, etc., etc., etc. So this is all, again, thanks to J.D. Rockefeller and his philanthropy. Okay, by 1943, the program under the Foundation's Mexican agricultural project had proved such a success with the science of corn propagation and general principles of agronomy that it wasn't until that it was exported to other Latin American countries. There you go. So they just changed the food source and basically the traditions of South America. And what are they doing at the moment in India with Terminator seeds? And, this is the whole thing. This is where Monsanto came from. In 1956, a program was taken to India. In 56. And again, India, guys. India, and the Vedas and the Vedic tradition. India is a very ancient civilization. It's a big Tartarian Moorish stronghold. That's why they were trying to whack it so hard, and it ended up obviously with the British taking over late last century, late in the 1800s. So the program was taken to India, again with geopolitical imperative and providing an antidote to communism. So they say it wasn't until '59 that the senior foundation officials succeeded in getting the Ford Foundation, enter Henry, and later USAID, and later still the World Bank, to sign on the major philanthropic project known to the world as the Green Revolution. It was originally conceived in 1943 as CIMIT. That's an acronym, which means the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center. In Mexico, it also provided significant funding for the Rice Institute. So basically they got into all the staple cereals and monopolize that as well. Costing around $600 million over 50 years, the revolution brought new farming technology, increased productivity, expanded crop yields, and mass fertilization to many countries throughout the world. Later, it funded over $100 million of plant biotech research and trained over 400 scientists from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. It also invested in the production of transgenic crops, including rice and maize. So there you go, GMO. In 1999, the President Gordon Conway addressed the Monsanto Company board directors, warning of the possible social and environmental dangers as the biotech and requesting them to disavow the use of so-called terminator genes. The company later complied. Well, I'm not sure if that's gone through. I know they've definitely been taken to court and they've had to pay lots of money, so I hope that that's been retracted. They're not doing that anymore, because this is what they were doing. They went into India, and if you don't know the story, Monsanto went in and they were selling seeds which people have termed the terminator seeds, because what happens with these seeds is you plant them and you get your crop and you get all the seeds from the crop, but none of those seeds will grow. So you can sell that crop, but you don't have seeds for the next season, so you then have to go back to Monsanto and buy more seed. And what happened in India is a lot of the seed wasn't sprouting, and farmers put all their money into this seed. They didn't get a crop. They couldn't afford to grow their next year's crop, and so they basically, in India there's a law that if you die of natural causes, that your debt goes to your family, but if you die of suicide, your debt is wiped. So you can imagine what went on in India. Over 67,000 farmers committed suicide over terminator seeds. Actually, and that figure's a few years old. It's probably a lot more now. So this is what's going on. This is what has gone on all last century with this money that was basically stolen from the New World, from the USA. I'm just going to read this little bit here that says the Rockefeller Foundation Communications for Social Change Network. The network is enabled by the Rockefeller Foundation for collaboration between experts and communication professionals that include grassroots, community-based and international non-governmental organizations, as well as multilateral and bilateral entities. Its involvement in AIDS prevention was based on promoting deep-rooted social changes that stem from informed and inclusive public engagement. However, it recognized that wide-scale educational programs focused on altering individual behavior played a critical role. God, I'm not feeling very... That the wide-scale educational campaigns focused on altering individual behavior played a critical role. This is exactly where we find ourselves now. And I am trying to be careful. YouTube, please, YouTube censors. Gosh. The strategy and principles linked with the network are listed below. Sustainability of social change is more likely if the individuals and communities most affected own the process and content of communication. What does that mean? Get people emotionally involved. Communication for social change should be empowering, horizontal versus top-down. give a voice to the previously unheard members of the community, and be biased towards local content and ownership. So there's a lot of doublespeak going on in here. And you know, this is one way to change a community, especially a community that's, you know, having struggles, you know, is developing. If you go in and you offer some of those people, you know, education and money and a better lifestyle and prominence in the community, and all they have to do is you know, tell the community what you want them to, but then how easy is it? But you see, what they do is that they don't go in and say, hey, here's $20, go and tell the community this. They indoctrinate these people with degrees, right? Degrees. How many degrees? 33. With degrees, they make them think that they're these educated people that are really smart, and so these people really think that they're going out and helping their communities, but you know, they've been tricked. And then it goes down here, emphasis should shift from persuasion and the transmission of information from outside technical experts to dialogue, debate and negotiations on issues that resonate with members of the community, which is, emphasis on outcomes should go beyond individual behaviour to social norms, policies, cultural and supporting environments. I'm not sure if you can see what I'm saying, but and this is exactly what's happening right now. They go in, they get people emotionally attached to different causes, to different things that are going on. They put out their information that everybody reacts to, and by doing this they can then get their view of the situation put out en masse to a community, but by the community. So they're not going to, you know, at this point, you know, even if you're not watching the news and the MSN, you're still hearing this message because it's now being parroted by the community itself. Okay, and that is the Rockefeller Foundation Communication for Social Change Network. Now they say it right there, social change. Whose change? Who decided this change? Where's this change going? And there's a lot more. there's a lot more, guys. But this is, you know, we're sort of getting on to that over an hour now. So as part two, I just really wanted to point this out, that this is what's happened is, you know, a lot of this goes back to the founding of the USA, and I do mean founding. They found it, and all these buildings were found. That's why they're all mud flooded. You know, all these industries were found. You know, that's why we had oil before we really had anything to run oil that we needed oil for. You know, there was all this machinery to get oil, but nothing that it was needed for. At the very start, they were distilling it down to kerosene and things. So it doesn't make sense, you know, it doesn't make sense at all. All these, you know, the trains and the train tracks, the amount of iron and stuff, and the workers, there's not a lot of foundries, you know, you don't hear about them. I do need to look into that further, definitely. But this is the thing, they've turned up on a continent that's been covered in another civilization, all there. All the tech was there, all the industry was all there, and it just needed to be dug out and worked out. And so the people with the money who were funded did that, and they turned them into their own monopolies, sold the found tech back to the people, and with that money have then built up their own society and controlled the direction of that society for the last 100+ years. And that's the story in short. That's pretty much the last 200 years. You know, destruction of civilizations and societies through some kind of event, natural or man-made, and then the usurpers coming along and finding their treasure, right? X marks the spot, digging it all out, claiming it as their own, renovating everything, and crowning themselves as king of the world. And here we find ourselves in 2020, and basically I wanted to make this second part talking about this because this is where we find ourselves right now. This is all culminating in front of our eyes. All this that the Rockefellers started back in the 1880s. So there you go, guys. What I'd like to say is, it looks bad, but we've won, guys. This is all coming out. It's all being exposed. It's all there. People are waking up faster than ever. So I don't want this to be a downer. I don't want you to think, oh my God, we're stuffed. They've just got control of everything, because what they can control is constructs and boxes. They cannot control the human mind, the human imagination. We will always prevail. We always have, and we always will. And this has only been a couple of 100 years, as the research is telling us, and we've already, exposed everything. And look at how much work they put in to try and control us, and we've exposed them all in like a decade. So we've won. They're in their death throes. They're just sinking fast and just trying to keep their head above water, which they can't. So it is all good, guys. It is all good. So I hope you enjoyed that. Part 3 shouldn't be as long. This one took a while. I was just trying to get the story and how I wanted to get it together. It was a bit hard, but hopefully it came together well, made some sense, and you got something from that. Hi guys, how you going? Cambell here from Autodidactic Channel. Hope you are having an amazing day. And as always, guys, autodidactic means to be self-educated. And in this world, we need to be self-educated, because if we are not, then the only choice we have is to believe what we are told. And what we are told is clearly not true. So today I wanted to talk about early America and its millionaires, the people who have gone into America. America was found, it was built out with cities, with red brick buildings, star forts, cathedrals, the lot. It was all there. A lot of it was buried. But when they rediscovered America, certain families went in and they just claimed everything. They walked in and said, yes, this is ours. I guess if anyone said no, they probably got killed. And basically these people just stole everything and then sold it. They walked in, they stole towns fully built out, and then they sold all the real estate like it was theirs, and that's how they made their money. So it was only a very few that were allowed to inherit these buildings that were found. And this is how 200 years, 300 years later, these families are still on top. They just went in and they just said, no, it's ours. And they just stole the wealth of the earth. And they have changed our history, and they've been feeding us the same crap, the same lies and deceit for hundreds of years. But their plan is failing, because we can think for ourselves. We can see through the cracks. They haven't done a very good job of cleaning up their trail. It's everywhere. And the reason is because they think they are gods. They are arrogant. They believe they are above us. They believe that we are their cattle, their slaves, and that we exist to make their lives easier. They literally, their plan was to become gods on earth. That's why they destroyed all the old gods, guys, all the actual gods. And they walked in and they just stole everything from the earth after the cataclysms and professed themselves as lords of the earth. And I find it interesting that in the Christian Bible, the King James Version, which, as a side note, was only written in the 1600s, guys. So why most Christians across the planet use the King James Bible as their original 100% verified Bible, I have no idea, because it makes no sense. It was a complete rewrite, and this was done, we're told 1300 years after the Council of Nicaea, where the Bible was definitely just edited to crap. They took books out, they took lines out, they put stuff in, and they changed the whole story. Then 1300, 1200 years later, they did it again. And people think this is the word of God or the message of Jesus. It does not make sense. It doesn't, guys. If you want to read your Bible, find an Ethiopian Bible, pre-1800. It will still have the Book of Enoch in it. That's how they found the Book of Enoch. It got ripped out of the Bible in 325, but it was rediscovered because it never got ripped out in Ethiopia. It was still in there. All these extra canon books used to be in the Bible, but they were taken away for some reason. But I digress. So let's get into looking at the Astors. This is John Jacob Astor, America's first multi-millionaire. And I just want you to notice his face. If you start to look, you will see this quite a bit. Long, sloping forehead, beady eyes, which we've been warned about, beady eyes, and a pointy nose. I mean, is that not just the description of what we've been told of the people that are bad? Seriously, all these pictures we see of people that are coming in and doing the wrong things in, fairy tales and different stories, they all got beady eyes and pointy noses. Something to keep in mind. Excuse me. Alright, I have been rambling. Let's get into this. So, Astor. John Jacob Astor. Born Johann Jacob Astor in July 17, 1763 in Germany, was an American businessman, merchant, real estate mogul and investor who mainly made his fortune in the fur trade by investing in real estate in and around New York City. This be him. John Jacob Astor. So it says born in Germany, immigrated to England as a teenager when he was 16, and he worked for his uncle. He worked with his brother for his uncle in a musical business where they made flutes. Now that to me, just the time frame, late 1700s, early 1800s, making flutes. I'm thinking they found a warehouse full of instruments that were already made, and they stole them and they were just selling them. Now, this family is not musical in any way, shape or form. They are not right-brained. They are completely left-brained. They're not. It doesn't make sense that they were musicians of any kind. They were finding stuff, stealing it and reselling it, and that's how they made their millions. These guys are deceitful, parasitic, lying thieves. Nothing more. They are subhumans, and they should be treated as such. So he was the first prominent member of the Astor family, and the first multi-millionaire in the United States. So here's the early life. He had three older brothers. He worked for his dad in the butcher. Then he moved to England at 16 to sell flutes with his brother for his uncle's piano and flute manufacturer, Astor and Broadwood. While there, he taught himself English and turned his name, anglicised it to John Jacob Astor. Somewhere in the early 1780s, 83, 84, he immigrated to New York City. Now, how old was he then? 1783. He's 20 years old. So he's worked for 4 years in England. He's now 20, and he's got the money and everything to immigrate to New York. And obviously he gets there just at the end of the American Revolution, because these families wouldn't go in when they were warring, would they? War is just for the common people. It just says he rented a room, met his future wife there, blah, blah, blah. He was going to work with his brother Henry in his butcher shop, but a chance meeting with a fur trader on his voyage inspired him to join the North American fur trade as well. After working at his brother's shop for a time, he began to purchase rawhides from Native Americans, prepare them himself, and then resell them in London and elsewhere at great profit. He opened his own fur goods shop in New York in the late 1780s. Okay, so he's got a fur shop in New York before he's 30. He's he's got himself to England, taught himself English, got himself to America, then taught himself to speak with the natives, found the natives. He's working full time. He's also got another business trading furs, but he's not just trading them. He's actually getting these raw furs and turning them into items that can be sold and then shipping them back to England. I guess they're going to say his brother or his uncle was selling them back there, but they were music, they were music businessmen. They weren't into furs and fashion. So I don't know. The whole thing just seems very weird. So he's just come over. He's 20 years old and suddenly he's got the biggest, fur shop in New York before he's 30. He took great advantage between Great Britain and the United States, which opened new markets. So it's just saying here he was exploiting all the new markets, all these new people coming in who were immigrants who came, most of them came from, other countries and they didn't have much. They didn't have money to go out and buy furs. They were trying to build houses to live in. And then it just says, Hudson, and this goes into the fur trade, how it was all dodgy as he basically started up a fur company, couldn't make money, so he sold it to the French. And then he went into Parliament and he made them pass laws saying that the French could not trade furs. And so he got his business back for free and he kept the money. Okay, this guy was the scumbag. Okay, the US embargo, 1807 disrupted Astor's import-export business because it closed off fur trade with Canada with the permission of President Thomas Jefferson. Astor established the American Fur Company in 1808. He later formed subsidiaries, the Pacific Fur Company, the Southwest Fur Company, in order to control the fur trading in the Great Lakes area. So this is what it's all about, monopoly. Monopolizing the businesses so they get it all. So this is all about he's, going through creating this big, fur business. Then the War of 1812 says it disrupted him. In 1816, he joined an opium smuggling trade. So this, like I said, he's a complete scumbag. First he goes up there and he decides, I find all these buildings, I'm just going to keep them and sell them to people and charge them rent if they want to live in them. Now I'm going to go and destroy, the fur trade in France and just try and monopolize it in America. Plus the fact that it's fur. I mean, come on, this guy, this is how he made his money. He went out and killed animals and ripped their skin off. It's quite disgusting. And then he decided, well, there's not enough money there. The war's coming in. I'm not making enough money, so I'm going to start selling opium. His American Fur Company purchased 10 tons of Turkish opium. 10 tons of Turkish opium. Then shipped the contraband item to Canton on the packed ship Macedonia. Astor later left the China opium trade and sold solely to the United Kingdom. So he started the drug trade, and this is what they do throughout history, guys. He's got people in England addicted to opium, so now he has customers that will keep coming back, and he's probably getting the opium for nothing, transporting out there and making huge profits. They still do this today. Cocaine, guys. Crack cocaine. Look at what happened in the 70s. Look at the 60s. Okay? Free love, peace, hippie. Everyone wanted to love each other. They wanted to move back to nature. And where were we? Like, literally by, that was 69, the summer of love. By 70, hippie was dead. Everyone was a cocaine head in the bloody discos dancing to crap. Cocaine. Okay? That's what CIA stands for, guys. Cocaine into America. The amount of CIA planes that have gone down and been found full of cocaine on their way into America is ridiculous. They are everywhere. So this started back in the early 1800s, and it's still same plan, guys. These guys are not creative. They are not creative. They can't create. They can just steal our creations and then destroy them into their own, disgraceful versions of them. So I really don't like these people, if you haven't caught on. Excuse me. So down here it just says real estate. He gets into real estate. I just want to read you this bit too. Astor's business rebounded in 1817 after the US Congress passed a protectionist law that barred foreign fur traders from US territories. The American Fur Company, John Astor's company, came to dominate trading in the area around the Great Lakes. John Astor also had a townhouse at 233 Broadway in Manhattan and a country estate. Of course, because he found them. Then he established things, but basically this, I can't read the bit, I'll find it, but he went into Congress and got them to pass that law, and he was like not even 40. He's just walked in and they've gone, oh yeah, sure, no worries, Mr. Astor, we'll change the law so that you can monopolize this market. Then it says, Astor began buying land in New York in 1799. Okay, so 1799, he was still pretty young. What was he, 37 in 1800. So he's, 38 years old, and he's buying up all the real estate in New York. He acquired sizable holdings along the waterfront. After the start of the 19th century, flush with China trade profits from his opium, he became more systematic, ambitious, and calculating by investing in New York real estate. In 1803, he bought a 70-acre farm, blah, blah, blah. From the disgrace, this guy, Aaron Burr, he was another politician who was just ripping people off left, right, and centre, and ended up getting done. But Astor just bought all his property on the cheap. So it says this Aaron Burr was an American politician and lawyer. He was the third vice president of the United States, serving during President Thomas Jefferson's first term. But he was another complete scumbag. Now, this guy, John Astor, was born in the late 1760s. Now, I have looked for this guy's dad, and he does exist, but only just. And this is the 1700s, guys. We're not going back very far. And if you look into history, you get back to 1750, early 1700s, everything stops. There is no records. All the great music, all the great composers, the great artists, all this stuff after 1700. Okay, so here's a little bit I found about his dad. Now this is actually his son, so that's not the guy from 1700. So John Astor, now I love this, was created in 1664 as Johann Jacob Astor II in Switzerland. He died in 1711. Okay, so this was the original John Astor. Then we get this guy, John Jacob Felix Astor, born in 1698, died in Waldorf, Germany. So this guy was the start of the lineage. Now Germany as well, these guys are all Jewish, as we know. A lot of them proclaim to be Christians, but they're not. People are what they do, they are not what they say. And Germany makes me think of Ashkenazi Nazis. Okay, this is where these guys come from. They're the Ashkenazi Nazis. They are. They came in and stole everything. So, but yeah, there's not a lot about his father. It starts with this guy, Johann Jacob Astor, born 1724. So that, it does go back, but you can't find anything on these people. Excuse me. Now in here, it just wants to start at this guy, Johann Jacob Astor. And you go into the Wikipedia, it does sort of mention his father's name. And I found this guy, so this is Johann Jacob Astor. This is the father of John Jacob Astor, same name. And it says that there was a Hans Peter Astor, 1620 to 1688. You don't get a lot though. Basically just says born in Italy, 1620. So the families stop at 1600. Everything seems to stop. All the history around the 1600s. It just doesn't go further back. Even with books and stuff, all these ancient books I'm looking into, or prehistoric, whatever all these old books I look into and show you photos from, even them, you can't get into the 1500s. It's 1650s, maybe, and you do not find much before that. So yeah, like this, the story just ends. Like, so basically this John Astor guy is the first we hear about, and he's the first millionaire, you know, the first prominent one, does all this stuff. And then his family's been one of the elites ever since. So this just says, considered America's first aristocrats, and these guys, they're the same as the royals. They just think that money makes them better than everyone else. The Astor family is considered as America's first aristocrats. The family traces its roots to Germany and England and is related to other prominent families like the Livingstons, the Roosevelts, the Dudleys, the Winthrops, and the Bayards. Their earliest known ancestors worked as butchers in Germany. So this is what they said John Jacob's father was. Obviously his father wasn't even in Germany, so this is not even researched. Before the family didn't move to England. It never said that. Only he did, to become a flute maker. So this is just, oh my God, they can't even research a little bit to write an article properly. It's just ridiculous. And then, you know, furs, pianos, real estate. Eventually they moved to New York. The family imprints can still be seen everywhere. They were once called the landlords of New York. Now, why was that? Because they went in and stole all the buildings and then charged everyone else to live in them. That's how they made their money, guys. But from us. They are parasites sucking living off us. So all we need to do, like most animals with parasites, just brush them off, rip their heads off, and they're gone. So where some of the places are still named after them, like Waldorf Astoria Hotel, Astor Row, Astor Court, Astor Place, Astor Avenue, and even Astoria neighborhood in Queens, there are also towns named Astor in Florida, Georgia, Kansas, and Iowa, as well as places called Astoria in Oregon, Illinois, Missouri. In Wisconsin, there is also an Astor Park. Now, that last article I wrote, it said they were just in New York, didn't it? It said he had 2 properties in New York, a farm and one on the water. As you can clearly see, these guys were everywhere. They took the lot and just said, it's ours. You want it, you pay. That's what they did. And these guys are, like I said, they're Jewish Ashkenazis. Now, in traditional Jewish law, in the Talmud and stuff, it says after every 7 years, all debt must be forgiven. And this is what they've done. They've gone in. This is why they're not Jewish. They're slightly Jewish. Now, they've changed. You know, like all people who use religion for control, they've changed it to suit them. So they took that bit out. No, we can charge you interest. And if it kills you or you commit suicide because of the pain, we don't care. We now have changed the law, so God is on our side. That's what they're saying. If you also look into the original version of the Lord's Prayer, the Christians, it says, forgive us our debts. Oh, is it debt? No, forgive us our debtors, and as we forgive their debts against us. It's not forgive us our sins. That's being changed, guys. This was all about money and debt and interest, and saying that you cannot do it. You know, there's also another quote from Einstein that says, compound interest. What does it say? Compound interest is the third greatest thing on earth, or something like that. But he's basically saying with compound interest, you can take over the world because it doesn't end. But all debt is supposed to be wiped after 7 years if it can't be paid. That was the law. That's how we lived properly, guys. It's all doublespeak, monetary crap. You know, it's all this legal lingo and doublespeak that they've created. And they've created it and they put it there and to make themselves look smart. They don't understand it because it's all bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. But we read these legal letters and go, oh, what does that mean? And they just go, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. No, they just made it up. Just made it up. Now, there's a thing called the robber barons. So a robber baron is a term for one of the powerful 19th century US industrialists and financiers who made fortunes by monopolizing huge industries through the formation of trusts. I'll go into trusts later. They are a big thing of how they did this. It's all legal, legal and money. This is how they got in, and they tried to say they have ownership. They still don't. But as long as we believe it, they do. Because we give it to them until we say no. Okay, so the formation of trusts, engaging in unethical business practices, exploiting workers and paying little heed to their customers or competition. Alternatively, those who credit the explosive growth of American capitalism during this period to the indefatigable pursuit of success. So they're saying, people who believe that these guys were successful just because of their drive to succeed are morons. That's what it's saying. Are likely to celebrate these entrepreneurial tycoons as captains of industry. But in reality, they were thieves who were monopolizing, exploiting, paying little heed to customers, dodgy business practices, and people put these guys up on pedestals and say, yes, this is what we want. We want to be successful like these people. These guys weren't successful. They were subhuman scum. They still are. Their families still are. What they get up to in private is disgraceful. The way they treat humans is unhuman, subhuman, and so they are no longer human. They've done that themselves. Okay? These people are thieves, and they change all the laws and get us to agree. That's how they keep it. Okay, so all these people who think, oh yes, these people are so rich and we need to do, this, and oh my God, all these success principles, and it's all a lie, guys. You don't know how many people made their billions in America in the 1800s? Like 10 families? Excuse me, that's it. It's nothing. We had people stealing all the real estate. We had people stealing all the railways, stealing all the metal foundries, and just starting them up again, saying, these are ours, you guys need to pay. And of course, most of them are probably running on free energy. And that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother deception, how they turned that. They're still getting free energy, but they're charging us and telling us that they're making it. It's such a lie. I'm going to keep going. This sort of video has gone a bit sideways of what I actually wanted to say. It's turned into a little bit of a rant. But I'll just sort of finish up with a few more bits, and hopefully this all sort of comes together and makes sense. But I will be delving into this a bit more, this topic. So John Jacob Astor, this guy, a thief from the 1700s, amongst the earliest of the robber barons was John Jacob Astor, a firm magnate who amassed his fortune through the monopoly held by his American fur company. And as I showed you, that was done through law, and very distinctly he got everyone out of the country, so he was the only trader. He had the only company, and as you saw, within like 10 years, he was multi-millionaire. So yeah, his American fur trade, the first 30 years of the 19th century, this monopoly was achieved in part by crushing rivals and systematically cheating Native Americans for their fur pelts. So he wasn't even paying these guys properly. He's just a thief. He's just a... people like this, he's not even a person. He's not a human. He's a disgraceful parasite. And people like this, when I hear the stories, we need to rid our earth of these parasites. And I'm going to get into this and get into the legalities of how they have done this. Alright? It's not even that intricate what their plan is. It's more coercion, and that we don't see the plan. Now I've put a video up. It's on my BitChute, and I've also put a link under my comments in my channel for the song Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. So have a listen to that. Have a listen to the words. It's very, very interesting. And I just wanted to show you one more thing, I think. Now this is the Gilded Age. You've probably heard of the Gilded Age. This is another thing that they've invented. Oh, the Gilded Age, yeah, all these people made millions and millions, and then they went to New York and built these massive mansions on Fifth Avenue. They just happened to build them halfway in the ground. And then when they couldn't get them working, they knocked them all over within sort of 30 years of being built. And these were amazing buildings. So this is the Gilded Age. This is, we're told, oh, the Gilded Age is so good. Oh, yeah, these 10 families made all this money while millions suffered. If you look at the stuff of the Gilded Age, it's all fat cat. Look at this. This is stuff that was going around. This is Washington. This is a big fat cat with money hanging everywhere. And he's going, no, you do what I tell you. And this is Lady Freedom. Going, but, and he's going, you do what I tell you. Another one, big business. And they're just standing all over these investments on war loans and what's this? Profits from war. So this is all war. It's just showing you how big business has created a mountain of money from war, from killing humans. This is all Gilded Age stuff. This is what the people thought. Again, I'm not sure what a Pullman is. Obviously not a very nice person, but it shows you here, this is the average person being squashed between high rent and low wages. So they need to live somewhere. All these buildings were found, they weren't built, but these disgraces decided to own them and charge people to live in them while paying them not enough money to be able to live. And these guys made billions. Billions. They're not human, guys. They are not human. If they were, they have given up that right. And this is what they were. They're just complete scumbags, thieves, disgraceful. I don't know what else to say about them. But this is it. And we get the same stuff today, guys. With this, we still get this imagery: fat cats living parasitically off the work of the masses. That's what they are. And in the end, look at them. That's a good picture. They can't do anything. All they do is live to parasite off us. They don't have inventions. They can't create. They can't make anything good. All they can do is destroy. Because in their mind, they are right about everything. And so if they don't understand something, it needs to go. Alright, so I'm going to cut it there, guys, because I've seriously gone on a bit of a rant. But these guys, this is just the asters, and actually there's one more thing I want to show you. So what we're going to do here is go novate, meaning. Now what did these people do when they hit America? They went into all these buildings, and what did they do? They renovated them. They renovated them, right? They renovated them. What is novate? To replace with a new contract. The loan agreement has been novated. So this is, again, this is for their minds. They write everything legally. They go in and they go, oh, okay, this building is empty. I'm going to get a piece of paper out here and I'm going to write a new contract, a new novate. I'm going to renovate this building. So they've replaced the contract. They go, oh, well, clearly there's no one here, so I will take possession as the landlord. And they write that. And as long as no one comes up and disputes it, then they say that's fact. Yep, no, well, unless you can dispute it and prove it wrong, it's true. So I'm now the landlord, I'm now the owner. I've renovated this building, and now it's mine. And now everyone can pay to live in it or to use it until I can't figure out how to work it out, and then I'll knock it over. But this is renovate. It's wordplay, guys. It's all legalese wordplay. Novate, replace with a new contract. Renovate. Okay, so this is what they're doing. It's all legalese. And this is so that they can put it up and say, no, we've done nothing wrong. And this is, you hear a lot of people say, they have to let us know what's going on. And that's true. That's true, because in their legalese, script that they've written, that they sort of say, well, this makes us right. They have to obey that as well, or else it doesn't, it makes them uncontractual legally. So this is not to do with morals or anything. It's to do with like, oh yeah, but I did what the paper said, so that means everything's good. Turning energy into physical things. Changing from what our true potential is as energy beings to everything is physical. Obey the words. Renovate. Replace with a new contract. Köyün içinde bu altayda keviz çağırar su yağında Aktay kağın geceginde Hi guys, how you going? Cambell here from Autodidactic Channel. Hope you're having an amazing day. And as always guys, autodidactic means to be self-educated. And we need to be self-educated because if we are not, we have to believe what people tell us, and we have to believe what the government and the law tells us. And as I will show you in this video, what they tell us is wrong, and they know it's wrong. It's complete fraud and it's wordplay, and they are purposely tricking us into creating contracts with them, and this is what it's all about. So this is also how they've stolen all the land, all the houses, all the resources, and pretty much all of our money, which is wealth. So if you can imagine, when there's no money and you have wealth, then you just own it. And if someone wants to take it, it's fairly hard. But when they change it to money, and everything has a money value, and then they bring in things like debt, mortgages, and you have to pay them back. If you can't, they can then take the physical property. So what they're doing is they're swapping physical property and resources for fake money that they invented. So let's have a look at maritime law. Okay, this is just a definition from the Free Dictionary, Free Law Dictionary. Maritime law is law governing sea or seaport bound actions conducted and commerce transacted. Registration, license and inspection procedures for ships and shipping contracts, insurance, and carriage of goods and passengers are included. A slightly bigger definition is maritime law is the collection of laws and agreements that govern the behaviour and activities on the seas. The area of law governs how people interact and do business on the waters of the world. Also called admiralty law, maritime law primarily governs activities on international waters. There are also laws that apply to the waters in and near each country. Generally, each country applies their own laws to inland waters like lakes and rivers. And it just goes on telling you that it's all about ships and what happens, and passengers and salvage and treasure. And that is what it's all about. But this maritime law has been changed. The law of the sea has now become the law of the land. So this website is called expertinalllegalmatters.com, and this says how the system tricked you into slavery. It all starts with the Colonial Court of Admiralty Act 1890. This is where common law was changed to civil jurisdictions. And there's a PDF you can download. I'll leave this link if you want to download that and read it. I'm also going to leave a few links below if you're interested in this topic, just of a couple of people that you can watch and really get an understanding of what's going on here. So it says here, an act to amend the law respecting the exercise of AD 1890 Admiralty jurisdiction in Her Majesty's dominions and elsewhere out of the United Kingdom, 25 July 1890. And this act may be cited as the Colonial Courts of Admiralty, Short Act 1890. And what is this act? Every court of law in a British possession which is for the first time declared in pursuance of this act to be a court of admiralty, or which, if no such declaration is in force in the possession, has therein original unlimited civil jurisdictions, shall be a court of admiralty, with the jurisdictions in this act mentioned, and may for the purpose of this jurisdiction exercise all the powers which it possesses for the purpose of its other civil jurisdictions, and such court in reference to the jurisdictions conferred by this act is in this act referred to as Colonial Court of Admiralty. Where in a British possession the governor is the sole judicial authority, the expression court of law for the purpose of this section includes such governor. So what are they saying there? It's a lot of legal double talk, and they love to do this to make it, hard to read. They actually read it differently. It's got a lot to do with numbers and word counts and all this stuff. I'll leave links to the videos below. But what they're saying here is basically every court in Britain and in their other colonies is now an Admiralty court, a court of Admiralty with the full jurisdictions of Admiralty. As you can see here, it says if they had unlimited civil jurisdictions, they now have full Admiralty jurisdictions. So it's just changed it from the land of the law of the land to the law of the sea. And it says down here, the possession of the governor is the court. Possession of the governor is the sole judicial authority. The expression court of law for the purpose of this section includes such governor. So he is the sole judicial authority under this act. The jurisdiction of a colonial court of Admiralty shall, subject to the provision of this act, be over the like places, persons, matters, and all things as the Admiralty jurisdiction of the High Court in England, whether existing by virtue or any statute or otherwise, and the Colonial Court of Admiralty may exercise such jurisdiction in like manner and to as full as an extent as the High Court in England, and shall have the same regard as that court to international law and the Committee of Nations. So again, everything is now ruled by Admiralty, and every court in the land now has the same jurisdiction as the High Court in England. Subjects to the provision of this Act, any enactment referring to a Vice Admiralty Court which is contained in an Act of the Imperial Parliament or in a colonial law shall apply to a colonial court of Admiralty and be read as if the expression Colonial Court of Admiralty were therein substituted for Vice Admiralty Court or for other expressions respectively referring to such. So that's just to do with the names. They're saying if we slightly change the name, it's still a court. And it goes down here, there's lots more, but it goes a lot more down there, and then we've got all these PDFs. So what has gone on? Well, basically what's happened is they have taken over with paperwork and wordplay. And this is to do with language, of course. And I've always wondered, in my whole life, language has interested me because it's confused me. Our language seems to be very, we don't seem to have enough words, to truly sort of get down into certain subjects. It's a very surface language. When you look at languages especially the Vedic language and Indian languages, and they have these words, people have surnames that are like 20 letters long. And they have all these words and they're very intricate, and they just always seem like they had a lot more context to their language than English. And of course, again, English we know is a conglomerate of, we've got French words and Spanish words and words from everywhere. And then of course we have things like there, and there, son and son. All these words, where and where, that are the same, but we're told they have different meanings. Like you plant a plant, you build a building. It's very simplistic. It just seems very simplistic. And there's a reason for this, and it's because they've changed our language, guys. Okay, so language comes from, we're told, the Phoenicians. That's why we have the phonetic alphabet. And we have words like phone, which is communication. We also have phony. If you've watched Martin Leedkay's work, he talks a lot about the Phoenicians. And they were obviously a seafaring, maritime civilization. And they've gone around and they've changed languages. And one thing about language which always confused me again is the word phonetic. I always wondered why phonetic, which means to be spelled the same way it sounds. I always wondered why the word phonetic wasn't spelled the same way it sounds. It's because it's Phoenician. It's got PH for Phoenicians. So what is a pidgin language? A pidgin language, originally a language that typically developed out of a sporadic and limited contact between Europeans and non-Europeans in locations other than Europe. From the 16th through to the early 19th century, and often in association with activities such as trade, plantation agriculture, and mining. So typical pidgins function as lingua francas, or means an intergroup of communication. So here you can see a pidgin language is a language that basically it's to do with trade. It's to do with maritime law, people going around the world in boats. Admiralty law, maritime law, it's the same thing. Going around in boats and using their law on the land and tricking people and saying that they have jurisdiction, but they don't. They only have jurisdiction for their boat, and so they have changed so many things, and seriously, they have changed paper. Paper is made from wood, and they have changed that to signify their boats. Very strange. There's a lot to this, obviously to the law, but just want to give you an overview of what's going on. So yeah, pidgin languages are basically a simplified language. It's a simplified down language that's used for trade. And that is what English is, and no doubt what many of our, especially Western languages are. They've been simplified into trade languages. So what is lingua francas? It's literally tongue of the Franks. No, Frankish language, tongue of the Franks. Language used as a means of communication between populations speaking vernaculars that are not mutually intelligible. The term was first used during the Middle Ages to describe a French and Italian-based jargon or pidgin that was developed by crusaders and traders in the Eastern Mediterranean and characterized by the invariant forms of its nouns, verbs, and adjectives. These changes have been interpreted as simplifications of the Romance languages because they bring together very diverse groups of people, many empires, and many trade. Anthropods have had lingua francas, if pidgin have sometimes defined less informatively. Okay. Now continue writing. Got to 7 up. Got to sign up. But that's basically what it is. A simplification of a language turned into a trade language. So they're saying, that language used to be a lot more complex, and as certain people went around and were trading with everyone, they needed a simplify, a language so that they could talk about trade, and just a small section of what the language is used for. But then over time, that's been turned into basically legalese, and it's been turned into our language. So it's been simplified out. Our language has been completely simplified, and changed as well. They also add words together, things like breakfast. It's break fast, right? That's the first meal of the day after you've fasted all night, and that comes from the idea comes from the Essenes, where they used to only eat from when the sun was highest in the sky until the sun was at the horizon. So basically midday to sundown they would eat, and then they would sleep, and they would fast until 12 o'clock, and then they would break the fast. Breakfast, Christmas, Christ Mass. I mean, it's all over the place. So Admiralty Law, I actually wrote down, hang on. So here's just a couple maritime words. Maritime is law of the sea. Currency. Current, right? To flow. Currency. And bank. Riverbanks. This is where it comes from. So they used to stop on the banks of rivers and unload their cargo, and then load on cargo and use the currents to flow and go somewhere else and make money. Warship, worship, very close. birth. Now, you've probably all heard of this, you know, birth and birth. Birth is a place where you put a ship, where you hold a ship, and we obviously are told that we have a birth certificate. And women's waters, you know, their waters break before they have birth. And this is all tied in to birth certificates and how what they do is they actually incorporate us as dead, as dead entities, and that way they don't have to deal with us unless we know their language and we can talk to them as, in their eyes, as living beings. And so this is what we've got to learn, because when you do, the thing is they have to abide by their law. This is one of the things that they do. So when you know how to do it, you can outsmart them, because everything is false. All debt is fraud. All tax is fraud. You know, if you've got a loan, which is called a mortgage, as you see here, mortgage means death pledge. Literally, it means death pledge. And a mortuary. Death pledge. That's what a mortgage is, because you sign one and then you've got to work yourself to death to pay it off. That's how they get us. Doc. Ship's dock, a document, a court dock. You have to stand in the dock, don't you? So this is how they say, oh, you know, you're on dry land, blah blah blah. You're in our jurisdiction, but on the docks. When you're in court, and that's where they get you up, and you've got to plead your case. Mast is a master. Chartered. It's a ship hired or freighted. We have chartered accountants, and we have charters, you know, we have charters, obviously, that are a legal term, but it means to hire something so you can use it as freight. So what is a chartered accountant? What's the freight? Because we know what the payoff is. It's our tax money. So we're the freight. Chartered accountants, you know, like a sheet of paper. A ship's sails are called sheets. It's how they get things to move. Court obviously is court. If you go to court, you probably get caught. And a courtroom is fictional. It's not the actual room. It actually only exists on paper. And if you know the ins and outs, if you go into a courtroom and the right document isn't signed by the judge, then there's no courtroom there, and the judge is sitting there illegally impersonating a judge. And if you know what you say, if you know how to deal with it and what you're talking about, you can actually take over the courtroom and throw the judge out. A court clerk takes money. Bank tellers used to be called clerks, didn't they? Bank clerks. And they all have ledgers, which legitimizes things. A ledger makes things legitimate in their eyes. Jurisdiction means opinion, so don't use it. Printing your name is legal, cursive is not, so they only see print, you know, it's always on documents, it's print your name, isn't it? And then the signature is different, that's your agreement, but you need to print your name because they don't recognize cursive, and it's interesting that it is called curse. A bond is bondage. And then we have things like wedding ring. A wedding ring is a seal, you know, like you used to see on manuscripts, they put rings around them. Sometimes it was like a ribbon ring with a wax seal on it. Sometimes they were metal. So these are some of the words and how they get us. And of course, what do they teach us? What's the first thing we get taught when we go to school? We get taught to spell, don't we? So they're casting a spell on us. They teach us to spell. The first thing, and you know, the second thing is don't use your imagination, isn't it? Go into the left brain. So this is maritime law, guys, and how they're getting us. This is, like I said, just an introduction. I will do some more on this topic, not sure when, but I will leave links below to some very good channels with some people who really know what they're talking about, because this, if you look online, there's lots and lots of people talking about this and trying this out, but a lot of them, you know, that they don't have the full story, and so it doesn't work. And you'll see, if you follow lots of these channels and look at these videos, lots of them end up in jail. I used to follow, what was his name? Dean Clifford, I'm pretty sure it was. And he ended up in jail many times because he knew some stuff, but basically he was trying stuff out to see what worked and using himself as the guinea pig, and you don't want to do that. So yeah, there'll be some links to some people who know what they're talking about below. So check them out if you're interested in this topic, because the truth is this is a way that we can really free ourselves and free the world, guys, because we're held in bondage by paper, by legalese, by spelling, you know, wordplay. They've tricked us and they're getting us to comply, and this is how they get us in debt, and how they can throw us in jail and do all these things. Now, if you know how to talk to them, you know the language, they can't do that because they don't have the power, because once you know the language, you're suddenly alive in their eyes. They have to view you as alive, and then they have to treat you as you know, a living entity, you know, an eternal entity, even as part of God. That's how they have to treat you. That's why they have to kill us at birth in their eyes, so that they don't have to deal with us. So I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for spending some time with me, and I shall catch you on the next upload. Bye for now.
Remember, in the end, nobody wins unless everybody wins. Beri görse ayudi, beri görse beredi, korkusu sol